What's up, guys? It's three-time NFL Pro Bowler, all-decade return specialist, Josh Cribbs. I want to welcome you to the Mac Sports Connection podcast, where Alex hosts all things Mac, all things football, all things sports, right here, Mac Sports Connection, baby. The Mid-American Conference best, bringing it only the greats, Mac, to everyone.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Mac Sports Connection podcast, part of the Varsity Podcast Network, presented by Learfield. I'm your host, Alex, the captain, and I'm trying something new. You guys may recognize the other man on the screen. You'll definitely recognize his voice. The man who brought us our Mac baseball rundown, Graham Giles, is joining me for this special segment. Graham, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. You know, I always love to come on and talk some Mac sports with you. I know you must be getting desperate to call the baseball guy on to talk about football, though.
Oh, I'll tell you what, it's you were pretty consistent with that, and I think the people enjoyed it. So figured I'd mix it up a little bit, get a little bit of variety, allow them to have a new voice, a familiar voice that they trust. Because frankly, I don't think people trust my voice anymore.
Well, I wouldn't. It's just
fair enough. Well, we are here, and we're like I said, we're doing a new segment. This is going to be a once a week segment throughout the course of the college football season, starting here in week 3. And I don't have a catchy title for it. I don't know if you've come up with anything, but essentially what we're going to be doing is a one-game preview. I've thought about in the trenches, behind enemy lines, a couple different things, but I think right now we can just roll with a one-game preview. And this week we've opted for Cincinnati versus Miami. Graham, any thoughts just before we get this thing going? Any tidbits of history or information you want to give to the people before we talk about who this game could belong to this weekend?
Well, you know what's great is that I think everybody's big tidbit is the same tidbit we get every year, is that this is the 120-something. This year it's going to be the 128th, but it's always the 120-something matchup between these two teams. It's the second oldest rivalry in college football. The first oldest non-conference rivalry in college football, and one that we love to see. It's it's all tied up now, something like 60-60, and several ties, 7 ties. So it's and it was as close as could be last year without being a tie going into overtime, and Miami winning it with a walk-off pick.
Gotta love that. That's the Redhawks snapped a 16-game losing streak in the series dating back to, 2005, 2006? I mean, it's been an incredible run for Cincinnati in this rivalry to take a one-game lead going into last season. I mean, it's pretty incredible how dominant Miami's been in this rivalry over its history. And now Miami has a chance to retake the lead after a couple-year hiatus. This is going to be a good one. You talked about this being one of those games that came down to overtime, came down to being as close as it could be without resulting in a tie. And I think we're in store for another good one this year. Cincinnati did not have a great season last year, 3-9. Miami, of course, went on to win the Mid-American Conference, 11-3. What are we looking at? I know that you dived into the Miami side a little bit. Talk to me about these Redhawks, Graham.
You know what? We don't really know much about these Redhawks. Is the thing is now as compared to other MAC teams, they've had less turnover than the rest of the MAC, but still plenty of turnover. Where we saw this vaunted defense from last year has lost some of the guys in the secondary that were so great for the team last year. And they've had one game this year, one game against Northwestern that was close. It ended up 13-6 in Northwestern's favor. And we don't really know. I mean, this team last year ranked 12th in the country in defense, 1st in the country in special teams, and like 113th in offense, which tells you just how much disparity there was between units even on this team last year. And this year we don't have really any points to go with. We do have rankings, their offensive rank right now is this based on ESPN's S&P Plus. Offense 127, defense 35, special teams 92. But what that tells us, I don't know. It's been a week, and well, I mean, it's been 2 weeks, but we've had one game, and these Redhawks, we just don't know what their identity is. One thing I can say is it looks again like this squad is going to have a tough defense, and we expect that from Miami at this point. Matt Salopek is back. He led the team in tackles last year. He led the team with tackles in week 1 against Northwestern. So I think we can expect him to lead this defense. Chuck Martin has been a guy who's run a tough defense since he's come to the MAC from Grand Valley. He's also just a coach who wins. He has several national championships under his belt. A couple of MAC championships now. And, I expect this to be a really disciplined squad. He runs a really conservative running attack. They don't go for it on 4th down. They just show up and they go to work. And that's, we'll see. We'll see how it does against these Bearcats.
I think it's interesting. You talk about Chuck Martin and what he's done and all the winning he's done. People who just look at his record, not going to be impressed. I mean, he's got technically a losing record as an FBS coach, but that's not because of what he's done. That's because of the mess he inherited coming into Miami. I mean, Miami was not a great program when he took over. And now he's kind of transformed them. You talked about him winning a couple MAC championships. He's undefeated in MAC championship games. And I think that's an important stat, especially in this era of MAC football, that there's a lot of parity. There's a lot of up and down, and who knows who's going to be good.
Well, it's interesting because this seems to be the new style of MAC coaches. Between Chuck Martin and Jason Candle, we've got kind of these guys who are sticking around longer than we expected them to. They're really making a home at these colleges, and they're trying to build something, to build their own style. And it's working. I think it's working for both of these guys who, both of them have taken their programs to MAC championships more often than their predecessors. And really, I don't love Chuck Martin's style of football. If I'm being honest, that's I don't think it's very exciting. But apparently it works. He's super consistent. And like you said, he does have an overall below 500 record. As a coach, and when you have that losing record, sometimes you can jump to these conclusions that means that you're not doing things right. But I think that speaks to kind of the methodical, conservative quality of a Chuck Martin team, is that we're going to do things right, and we're going to do them the right way, and we're going to build slowly on the play before until we end up with these teams that can perform consistently year after year. And I think that's what we're going to see in Miami this year as well. Although with one game in, who knows what this Miami squad does?
I think Miami gets the benefit here for a couple reasons. Miami's at home. They have one game of film that the Bearcats have gotten to watch, and they've gotten a bye week after that first game. I mean, it feels like those are all positives in favor of the Redhawks. Yet we find ourselves sitting at a spread and Cincinnati being favored. And I think for good reason. I've got their numbers right here. The Cincinnati offense is averaging 554 yards per game. This is a really good offense that they've struggled defensively, but I think the offense they've been great. I mean, they ended up losing a game to Pitt last week. They actually let Pitt come back into this one, which kind of tells the tale of the defense. But the offense, I mean, they put up 38 against Townsend, 27 last week against Pitt, and they're putting a lot of yards on their opponents. I think that's got to be a key factor here as to why Cincinnati's being favored.
I think it's interesting. We're going to talk about that as we get into this debate here about who has the better squad. And this is the conversation we would have had coming into the game last year. Miami's got a defense that plays way above its level because they have these guys, these veterans on the staff that really step up and they're ready to play defense. Cincinnati's got this offense, both teams really selling out on their top unit. In Cincinnati's case, it's the offense, and in Miami's case, it's the defense. And this clash of these number one units, who's going to come out on top? But if we go to last year's game, that's not what happened at all. It's Cincinnati's defense played exactly like Cincinnati's defense, and Cincinnati's offense played exactly like Cincinnati's offense. It was Miami's offense stepped up, especially Brett Gabbert through the air, was throwing all over the place. Gage Larvin is gone, but he had a great game against Cincinnati last year, and then especially on the ground, both teams were running all over the place. It seems like both teams prepared for a passing attack, and then both teams decided to run. And I think we can expect similar surprises this year.
So let's just get into this. Obviously, you're in favor of Miami winning this game. I have to imagine it's a home game. There's a lot of heat with this being probably the penultimate game in this series for at least the foreseeable future. Why is Miami winning this? And let me see if I can tell you why they're not.
Well, look, man, I showed up. I got my Cleveland Guardians Hawaiian shirt on. This was a giveaway earlier this year, and I tell you what, it's I feel fresh in the fresh threads here, and I can tell you that's exactly how the Red Hawks are feeling. I threw on my red shirt, and I'm peacocking a little bit. That's a different kind of red bird, but I think it still works. The Red Hawks are going to win here today because they're living it up. They're on vacation last week, preparing for this game. They're ready to go. As we said, this is a very similar situation to what we saw last year when Miami went into Cincinnati and took down this team in their stadium. And, it took overtime to make that happen, but these teams played really close. This isn't a game like last week where Cincinnati went and Pitt came back by scoring 22 straight points against Cincinnati to take the lead and win with something like 35 seconds left to go in the game. This game last year between these two teams was close. It went back and forth the whole game. And if you look, I think it was funny. I was looking at the game last year on ESPN, and you look at their win probability tracker, and the entire time Miami's up in a lot of these situations, and the entire time 90% chance of Cincinnati winning, 80% chance. There's only one brief blip right when the fourth quarter starts. Miami's favored. And then Cincinnati scores and goes up, I think it's 27-24. And at that point, it sinks way down. Cincinnati's going to win, 90% chance. And we get to see that Graham Nicholson kind of last-second field goal to send us to overtime. And the rest is history. But this is the kind of game that happened, even though Cincinnati gets favored for no reason. They didn't have... We looked at the game beforehand. Their offense was way better than Miami's offense, and their defense was way worse. It spoke of a game that should have been very close because it was matching up weak squads against weak squads and strong squads against strong squads. And still, the whole world was favoring new Big 12 minted Cincinnati.
I think in fairness, Graham, I'm going to cut you off there. I think in fairness, Cincinnati had won 16 leading into this game. I mean, at some point, you kind of start to favor the team who's dominated the series, right?
Not dominated the series. They had won 16 in a row to come back in the series. That's the.
That's what I'm talking about. In recent history, they have dominated the 21st century in this rivalry.
If you want to talk about dominating the 21st century, we can go to all kinds of other rivalries and look at these long streaks. The game comes to mind when we talk about Ohio State and Michigan. These teams go on streaks. That's how rivalries work. It's crazy that we think that the longest rivalry wouldn't have the same patterns as these more modern rivalries do. And it does. I mean, this rivalry is tied up right now. And to think that the one win that Miami had doesn't indicate a new wave coming, a new chance for Miami to win a few in a row is, I think, frankly, naive. These Red Hawks are ready to come in here They've got 3 big games on the schedule this year against teams like Northwestern, teams like Cincinnati this week, and then coming up Notre Dame. They've got big games that they're going to have to play in, and losing that first one, a really winnable game against Northwestern, a game where they missed a field goal, something that they didn't do last year until the very end of the season. They've already missed one. I think this team is trying to find its identity again, and they're looking to take this rivalry game at home, first home game of the season. These guys are going to be fired up, and I can't imagine that that you're really saying that the 16 game streak is somehow indicative of how Cincinnati is going to trounce on Miami. You know, this game opened at -2.5. Right now we're sitting at -4, and that's all based on in favor of Cincinnati, that is. But that's all based on betting activity. The experts say this is going to be a close one, less than a field goal separating these teams. That's what we saw last year, really coming down to a touchdown in overtime that works out to win this game. I think that's what's going to come down to this year. Maybe not an overtime win, but Brett Gabbert's been around for 1,000 years. He's got a couple of offensive linemen who have been there just as long, and not as long in years, but actually longer in starts. And the defense, headed by Matt Salopek, who also is going to be his 41st start. This is a team who's experienced, full of seniors, full of guys who know what they're doing in this offense and defense, in this Miami Redhawks squad. And that's why they're going to come out. They're far more consistent than Cincinnati is. You look at this Bearhawks team, what am I talking about? Bearcats team. Although Bearhawks is a cool name, I wouldn't want to run into one of those in the woods. But this Redhawks team is ready to go. They're ready to take care of business. They're showing up for a business trip. This Bearcats team showed up last week, scored 28 points, or what was it, 27 points, and then let Pitt come back. And that's the kind of extremes that we see from the Cincinnati squad. The consistency of Chuck Martin is going to have these Redhawks on top.
I think it's interesting for me. When I look at the key matchups here, you talk about strength against strength, weakness against weakness. I think the one thing that I have circled on my digital paper here, I used a little pen, and I have to get a new screen now. But when I circled this, Miami had 40 rushing yards against Northwestern, who a year ago they had a pretty solid rush defense. I mean, we'll see what Northwestern's rush defense is again this year, but Miami only had 40 rushing yards. Cincinnati, their biggest weakness, I think, on defense is the ground game. They give up 190 yards last week. But I'm still, I mean, Miami doesn't have the same rush offense that they had a year ago. Brett Gabbert's a little bit slower. He doesn't have Rashad Amos. I think this is where you win this part in the trenches, right? And Miami has great leadership on the offensive line. Cincinnati has great leadership on the defensive line. This is going to be, but I think this is the battle we need to watch. I don't think we need to watch as much the wide receivers and the corners. I think this right here is the battle that everybody should have highlighted, circled, underlined, bolded. Miami's rush offense, can they take advantage of Cincinnati's rush defense? And I don't think they can.
I think that's an interesting take, because that was the storyline coming into last year's game, and it turned out it was Miami taking advantage of the Bearcats through the air that worked out for this Miami squad. That's the Brett Gabbert ran for 75 yards. He was the leading rusher for the Redhawks squad, and that came mostly on broken plays. These weren't designed quarterback runs. So while the rushing numbers looked good against Cincinnati, a lot of that came on the under the feet of their quarterback scrambling. And you're right. Brett Gabbert's coming off of an injury. He's probably not as fast as he was, not as elusive as he was. I mean, he's also 40 years old at this point. He's been there for 6 years. This will be he has 40 starts under his belt. And that kind of speaks to the injuries of Brett Gabbert. He's been there 6 years. He only has 40 starts. But he could finish this season 50 starts, 10,000 yards. He's a veteran under center there, and he knows how not to get rattled in tough games. And that's the difference in this game for these Red Hawks, is that they are prepared to go against tough opponents. They don't get rattled. They show up and they play their game. We're not going to see Cincinnati blow out this squad. And as long as they stays close, Miami can put up points.
You've talked about this Miami defense, and I want to counter with this Cincinnati offense. Again, going back to they're averaging 550 plus yards a game. The big one, Brendan Sorsby, he has looked good early. Again, you've played Townsend, you've played Pittsburgh, but I think that when you look at him, and I've got some of his numbers and stuff, or some of the numbers and stuff pulled up here, you got Corey Kiner. He had 150 yards on the ground. Is Miami's rush defense going to be capable of stopping that? I think overall you've got a better Cincinnati team than you had a year ago. That was a Cincinnati team who had just graduated all the guys who got into the playoffs. They're adjusting to a new conference, a lot of things kind of going on. I think this is probably a better Cincinnati team than we saw last year. And I think perhaps this might be a step back Miami team than we saw a year ago.
That's certainly possible. When we talk about Miami, the concern here is that the secondary has been weakened. Last year's top three, we had safety Jacquez Warren, corner Yassine McKee, and nickel Michael Dowell are all gone. And they combined for 6 interceptions, 22 pass breakups, and 8.5 tackles for a loss between the three of them. That's a lot of production to make up for. But this defense looked great against Northwestern. They held Northwestern to 13 points, a team who is supposed to be better than that on paper, better than this Miami defense. And they held them to 13 points. Hard to argue anything other than the sickly Miami offense didn't perform against Northwestern. We were talking about Cincinnati came into last year's game also just a smoke show when it came to offense. I think they were averaging over 400 yards of total offense coming into last year's game. And you know how many yards of total offense they put up in last year's game? About 400. That's the Miami defense held them slightly below their average, but not by much. It's statistically insignificant. The Miami defense did just enough to let their offense step up. And that's what happened last year, is their offense stepped up. I think this Miami defense is good. And I think this Miami defense is going to play well. It's got veteran leadership. I keep talking about Salopek. It's got great defensive line led by Brian Ugu, who is just a great pass rusher. He's going to get in there. He's going to disrupt the quarterback. We'll see. But this defense is going to be fast and frankly just annoying to face for the Cincinnati Bearcats. But the biggest thing is, will the Miami Redhawks offense step up? And that's what happened last year. They did. We're going to be looking to guys, like last week we had Jordan Brunson as the leading rusher for the Redhawks, and he only had 12 carries last year in 3 games, but he turned those 12 carries into 137 yards and a touchdown. Last week he only had 4.1 per carry. But you know who didn't get time last week is Purdue transfer Dylan Downing. And we're expecting him to be the guy in the backfield this year for the Redhawks. He didn't get a chance to show anything against Northwestern. I think we're going to see more of him. We're going to have to against Cincinnati. There are plenty of guys here. Cade McDonald was the second guy after Gage Larvadin last year. He had a big week against Northwestern, looked great. I think we're going to see him step up again. We're going to have to see more receivers from this Redhawks team step up, and I think we will. This is a rivalry game. It's a home opener, and it's a game that Chuck Martin is going to have these guys prepared for. That's why I think the Redhawks come out on top.
I think it's interesting you talked about what points Cincinnati was giving up, what points they were scoring. Cincinnati scored 24 points in this game last year. They gave up 31. And that was the average of what they did on the season. So Miami did the average job of what Cincinnati was surrendering and scoring. You mentioned them putting up or holding Northwestern to 13 points. Well, a year ago, Northwestern scored 22 points a game. Northwestern wasn't exactly known for their offensive prowess a year ago. They were known for their defense a year ago, and a lot of that is transferred over. They brought back a lot of starters on both sides of the ball. Miami played great in that Northwestern game defensively. My biggest question mark is going to remain for the offense. This was an offense I think a lot of people were high on, and especially voters for the Mid-American Conference. Is Miami going to come out and dominate this conference? We knew the defense was going to be good, but you're not going to win a lot of football games if you can't score touchdowns. And that,
well, you mentioned Rashad Amos is gone. Gage Larvadan is gone. We've got a few big playmakers on this Miami offense who are no longer around, but that just speaks to the fact that the rest of these guys have a chance to step up. And in week one, you're going to see a little bit of adjustment going on. I think the off week is going to give the Red Hawks a chance to figure out what their offense really looks like. We're going to see them come out and look really polished for this game against the Bearcats.
I think this Red Hawks offense had all summer to figure out what they were going to look like, and came out and put up 6 points. But before you're right, because teams never look rusty in that first game of the year. That's true. That's no big name teams look rusty either. It's just the little guys. And we expect Miami to have everything figured out and not anybody else. It's just correct.
It's wacko to think that these are the expectations for this Red Hawks team, that they have to have everything figured out week one, that they have to just dominate Northwestern, and that if they don't dominate Northwestern, they're not going to beat Cincinnati. I mean, Alex, I just want whatever you're smoking, because the idea that Cincinnati is that much better than Northwestern is wacko to me. So far they have a win against Towson and a loss against Pitt. You know where that puts them? I don't. I have no idea how good this team is. I know they're probably a little bit worse than Pitt and probably way better than Towson. But I don't know. That's the same place I'm at with Miami. The crazy thought is that this Cincinnati team is coming in here as some big powerhouse. They're the team who lost last year. You got to prove to me that they're a powerhouse worth respecting.
Well, and here's the thing. This is a program who is on an upward trajectory. This is not a program that, Cincinnati's been through so many changes over the last decade. You're going from Conference USA to the Big East to the AAC, and now you're in the Big 12. They've gone through a lot of changes, transformation. They've been to the playoffs. This is a new coach in his second year, Scott Satterfield, and I know Cincinnati fans are not overly high on him. I think this is a huge opportunity for him, and he understands what winning this rivalry means. You throw records, you throw everything out the window. This was a one-score game a year ago, and Cincinnati had one of their worst records in recent history. This was one of Miami's best teams that we've seen in the last 5-6 years, since their last MAC championship back in 2019. And they still only beat Cincinnati in overtime on the road. Cincinnati has a losing record against Miami at home too. I think that's something that needs to be brought up, and I don't know why it's relevant to this game since it's at Yager. Cincinnati gave up an 11-point lead the last time this game was at Yager with 3 minutes left to play in the fourth quarter. Miami gave up an 11-point lead in the fourth quarter with 3 minutes to play. Cincinnati came back and won this one 21-17. Miami struggles at Yager Stadium against the Bearcats. I think that is something worth noting. They don't put on the home field advantage that Cincinnati does. And it's crazy. It's crazy to think that Cincinnati, who has dominated this rivalry over the past 16 years, isn't upset that they no longer have this bell. They want to get this bell back. They want to retain it, and they want to win it one final time at Paycor here in 2 years. And then as this rivalry comes to a close, this great rivalry, Cincinnati wants to say, we finalized and finished this rivalry with the winning record. They don't want to give it back to Miami. Miami wants the same things, and I get that. But Cincinnati realizes just how much they missed this bell and realized that, hey, maybe we started taking Miami a little less serious than we've needed to. And now there's that next level of, refocus, reattack. Let's go get this thing and let's bring it back to Cincinnati.
Yeah, I don't know about that. That's the we know that's Miami came into Cincinnati last year knowing they were the underdog, knowing they were going to play in an environment that's hard to play in. That stadium gets loud, and knowing that they had to show up and fight to get this win. And they did. They showed up and they fought the whole game and a little bit extra, and got the win there. I don't think that they're taking that for granted. They're ready to come out here. That one, they know they can play with these guys. You mentioned that the last time this game was in Yager, they had the lead until 3 minutes remaining in the game. They know they can play with these guys. They know that this is a real rivalry game, that it plays close, and that as long as you show up, like these Chuck Martin squads show up, go to work, do your job, these kind of things, the game is going to be close enough that if everybody does their job, this game comes out in the favor of the Red Hawks. And they just have that kind of consistency. This offensive line, I'm looking at the Cincinnati game notes from their in their media packet here, and it's talking about the collective starts on their offensive line. And I thought it was wild that they brought up that the offensive line has 85 collective starts between them, and whereas the Miami offensive line has 81 collective starts between their right guard and right tackle. That's two guys. We're not even talking about the other three, and they're already there. They're already matching the experience on Cincinnati's front five that they're bragging about. This is a team that is experienced, and they're ready to play. They're seniors most of all, and they're going to be playing at home in front of their home crowd. And I know you mentioned that there is no home field advantage at Yager. That's nonsense. We were there last year. We were seeing those guys. Now, granted, that was the Ohio game, but again, another rivalry game. This one should be a little bit warmer. The weather should be a little bit better. The Miami faithful are going to be out in full force, ready to cheer on this Red Hawks team, ready to cheer on Brett Gabbert as he takes his second victory lap here. And I think they're going to come away with the victory. They're going to retain that bell.
Before we get into our final predictions for this weekend, first off, I want to say thank you, Graham, for coming on and helping out this weekend. I did want to mention the Varsity Network app. It's the Varsity Podcast app, which is available for download in the Apple Store and the Google Play Store. It's free. You can listen to hundreds of live audio broadcasts from all across the country for your favorite college football, college basketball, and college baseball teams. You can also listen to hundreds of podcasts such as yours truly, available to stream anywhere on the go. Again, the Varsity Network app, presented by Lairfield, free to download on the Apple Store and the Google Play Store. So I don't know if you have it downloaded. You should. It's a great app. And make sure you tell your friends.
Are you kidding me? Of course I have the Varsity Network app.
Should.
Come on.
It's an important one to have.
Well, we love the app. We love the app is the thing.
We do.
That's the
it's slick. It's a nice app. I mean, I love that you can save your favorite teams. They've done a nice job putting it together and making really any broadcast you want accessible. I mean, you've got some great voices in the Mid-American Conference that I can listen to on the go. I can be watching a game at home, pop on the broadcast, the audio broadcast, mute the TV, and listen to some of our favorite broadcasters. So that's one of my favorite things about it.
Gotta love that.
So what are
we talking about next?
So I guess we're going to just get right into our final predictions. Give me the score, give me your winner, and give me, I don't know, a quick 30 seconds as to why you're picking your winner.
So this one is going to be close. It's going to come down to the end of the game, but not overtime. But Miami walks out the champions here. This is going to be a 27-21 game, and with Miami coming out on top. We're going to see 2 sacks from Brian Ugu, and Matt Salopek again is going to lead the way in tackles. I think we're going to see more than 10 tackles from Salopek. The defense is going to do just enough to keep Cincinnati off the board, and then Brett Gabbert's going to step up, throw a couple touchdowns himself.
Okay, I like the prediction. As you know, I'm pretty high on Brett Gabbert and this Miami team, but I do like Cincinnati on the road. Again, they haven't lost that bell in 16 years. Their trophy case is looking pretty empty without it. They recognize the importance of this rivalry, and with the heat of what's happened with the cancellation of this rivalry, Miami and Cincinnati no longer playing after the game in Paycor here in a couple years. I think they understand that we want to win this thing. We want to wrap up this series. We want to go home with a couple victories. Want to end this thing on a winning streak. I really, really like Dante Corleone on the defensive line for the Bearcats, not the Redhawks. And I really, really like what this offense can do. They can put up a bunch of yards. They got to find a way to punch it in. They can put up a bunch of yards. And I really think that this is going to be in favor of Miami. Give me the Bearcats on the road for the final time in Yager Stadium. And I'm going to go 24-20. I'm going to make this one a little bit different, a little bit lower scoring than you have. But I expect the Bearcats to walk away with the victory this weekend.
No chance. Some chance. It's going to be a close game.
it's going to be a good game. I'm excited. Should be a good one. That one's going to be available over on ESPNU at noon on Saturday. So if you guys are getting a chance, check it out. It's going to be on the U. Speaking of other games, we have a lot of good ones on tap for the Mid-American Conference. Graham, I'm going to run down these and just kind of give me a quick prediction of who you think's going to win. And I'll start here at Central Michigan at Illinois. It's a noon game on Peacock. The line is Illinois 18.5. Who are you taking?
I'm taking Illinois. This is always a matchup. When we see Illinois match up against these MAC teams, it's always a matchup where the game is closer than the line. I think Central. I'll take Central with the points, but Illinois is going to win overall. It's just too tough to go into Illinois, and they always seem to eke out these victories, even when we want the MAC teams to win.
Isn't that the truth? Nightmares of Toledo, Illinois still flood my brain from a year ago. Up next, we've got UMass versus Buffalo at 1 p.m. Over on the CBS Sports Network. Line Buffalo 3.5. Who you like in this one?
I like the Bulls. I like Buffalo here, and they'll cover the spread. UMass better than I expected them this year. I've watched them. Really just the one game last week, but they're better than I expect them to be. Still not enough to take down Buffalo. Although last year this was Buffalo's trap game against Liberty that they should have won and lost. So this is maybe we see the same thing, that this week is just toxic for those Buffalo Bulls. I still expect them to pull it out and they'll cover.
I do think this Bulls team is far improved from a year ago. Pete Lembeau doing great things there in Buffalo already, trying to get this team ready to go and build a contender. Moving on, we've got Ball State at number 10, Miami, the U. I know how you feel about the state of Florida, so I need you to be honest with me on this one. 3:30 kickoff on the ACC network. It's the U by 36.5 points.
Yeah, I mean, Miami has looked so good this year. The Hurricanes just look they look like a top 10 team. They have that top 10 ranking now. They're going to win this one, and they're going to win this one easy. I do think Ball State keeps it a little bit closer. What did you say the line was? 33.5?
36.5.
36.5. Well, Ball State's going to keep it even closer than 33.5. So you heard it here first.
Okay. We've got next up Morgan State, FCS at Ohio. There's no line. That is a 3:30 kick on ESPN Plus. Feels like this one's a pretty obvious pick.
This feels like a trap game. This feels like one that I'm going to pick Ohio and say that the Bobcats are going to run away with this. That is my pick. The Bobcats are going to run away with this. And then Morgan State's going to make me look foolish. But the Bobcats are going to run away with this one.
Up next, we've got Colgate versus Akron. 6 o'clock kick at InfoCision Stadium over on ESPN Plus. Akron, I mean, they've needed this opportunity, I think, to come home. They've gotten their teeth messed up a little bit from these last two Big Ten opponents. Getting some Colgate at home, that's going to be a good one for them.
That's the I hope that's not how you treat your dental issues. You can't just brush away dental issues. Brushing helps a lot, but you got busted up teeth. Go see a dentist. I do think Akron is going to figure this out at home. They got beat up by Ohio State. They got beat up by Rutgers. They got to win one, right? And so this is another trap game. I'm going to pick Akron, but Colgate's going to win. My pick here is Akron.
Up next, Bethune-Cookman at Western Michigan, 6:30 kick, ESPN Plus. Again, no spread. Another FCS program. I like Western.
Yeah, Broncos, let's ride.
Moving on, Jacksonville State at Eastern Michigan, the Factory, and up in Ypsilanti. 7 o'clock kick on the ESPN Plus. This one's an interesting one. EMU -2. Not an intentional rhyme, I promise.
That's the I feel like that -2 is that home field advantage, that automatic field goal you give to the home team here. Eastern and Jacksonville State are dead even, right, in my mind, in terms of quality of team. In the home field advantage, I think you got to give it to EMU, and for that reason, I'm picking Jacksonville State.
Okay. Jacksonville State against Eastern. That should be a good one. Up next, we got our final two games of the week. Toledo at Mississippi State, 7:30 kick at Davis-Wade Stadium in Starkville on the U. Line Mississippi State. Sorry, not Mississippi. 10.5. We're both Rockets. What are your thoughts?
I'm picking the Rockets. I'm picking the Rockets here. This is exactly what Toledo loves to do. About week 3, week 4, they love to go down south and scare these teams. It happens like every 3-4 years. Toledo's gonna come down and they're gonna scare Mississippi State. And scare them so bad they're actually going to come back home with the win. Rockets are going to not only take the points, but they're also going to take the game.
Bold prediction by Graham, but I love it. And our final game of the week, Kent State at number 7 Tennessee. Good old Rocky Top, Neyland Stadium. 7:45 kick on the SEC Network. Tennessee by 49.
Yeah, these Golden Flashes are going to be Golden Flash is going to be lucky to get out of Tennessee alive. This is going to be a bloodbath, and I can't believe that Kent would even come close to touching Tennessee here. It's definitely Tennessee. It's Tennessee all the way. Even minus the points, it's Tennessee. Kent State is not going to be within 50 points of Tennessee here.
All right, guys, you heard it here first. There's some predictions from Graham, and take all of those to the bank. Trust him. Don't spend your mortgage on your bets. Graham is a knower of ball, and you can trust everything he just told you. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Nope, I'm sorry, you're cut off, sir. You're breaking up over there real bad, Graham. I apologize. No, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Graham, thank you for helping to preview Cincinnati, Miami. Should be a good matchup down there at Yager Stadium this weekend. Looking forward to catching all the action on that one. Do you have any final thoughts for people before we wrap this up?
I just think these Redhawks, they're going to be enjoying that win. They're going to be sipping cocktails, and they're going to pop on the old sunglasses and say, Graham was right.
Going to be celebrating their victory on Brick Street is what I'm hearing.
That's right. That's right. It's going to be all rum drinks and all good vibes in Oxford this weekend.
You can't bring the good vibes thing from baseball to football. Sure you can. Whatever. It's we do what we want. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We greatly appreciate it. We're going to be doing this again every single week. If you have a great name for this segment, reach out. Say, hey, the Graham is right segment or the Graham is wrong segment, whatever you want to call it. Reach out with some name suggestions, and I'll probably name drop you while we're doing the show. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate it, and we'll see you next week.